greatest marketing book ever published is you read those books, devour them, study them, don't just read them, and you have a tremendous foundation in the world of direct response.
Todd Brown, criador do renomado método E5.
Ele é especialista em engenharia de campanhas lucrativas para a aquisição de clientes.
E está por trás dos funis de alguns dos maiores nomes do marketing direto da atualidade.
Today, I don't believe that it is salesmanship in print anymore. I don't believe that salesmanship in print is the right mentality, the right approach to take. And we'll get into the difference between selling and marketing and how they're two completely different activities with two different outcomes and objectives. All marketing campaigns to me are kind of really broken down into two core sections, two big chunks. The first chunk, which is 75% of the marketing campaign, 75% of the copy, 75% of what it is that I say is differentiation in marketing is essential. And today, there are only two meaningful ways to differentiate. Once you've got the unique mechanism and you've identified the right primary promise, we then put together what we call the campaign thesis. Each one of those beliefs then become a CPB chunk.
Do you have any tips on that, on how people could get better in creating these kind of logical arguments?
Your biggest claim should only be as big as your biggest proof point. The easiest way to offer that proof, support, evidence is to use
Opa, antes da gente seguir o podcast aqui, eu só queria te lembrar rapidinho que se tu tem um vídeo de vendas ou se tu tem um VSL e tu quer aumentar a conversão dele, quer conseguir ganhar mais dinheiro aí com o teu VSL sem gastar um centavo a mais em tráfego e sem mudar a tua copy, eu preparei um vídeo, tá? Que eu te mostro 7 testes extremamente fáceis que qualquer pessoa pode fazer e que provavelmente tu consegue fazer aí no teu VSL também pra aumentar a conversão dele. Tá no primeiro link aqui nos comentários aqui do YouTube. É só tu clicar ali, assistir o vídeo e aumentar a conversão do teu VSL também, beleza? Então se tu ainda não viu esse vídeo, tá? Clica ali, assiste o vídeo, aplica os testes, tá? Porque só assim tu vai ganhar dinheiro. E agora, de volta aí pro podcast. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much, Todd, for being here. As I say to you, I'm a big fan of yours, and I hope that from this podcast we can create some value for our Brazilian audience. So first of all, could you please just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you have done for the few people that don't know you here in Brazil, so they can get to know a little bit better, know what you're good at, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll keep it to the marketing stuff rather than going personal. So I've been in the direct response marketing world for a little bit over 2 decades. And so my first exposure to direct response, I had no idea what direct response was. I thought marketing and advertising were kind of the same things and interchangeable. And when I started to learn that direct response was, at the time was salesmanship in print, and that you could create a sales pitch one time and then use it over and over and over to generate sales, I was absolutely bit by the bug, and I became just a ravenous student of direct response, learning everything that I could get. Learning from everything that I can get my hands on, studying the greats, probably very similar to you, Gary Halbert and Dan Kennedy, and back then Jay Abraham, and then of course going to the classics, and then I'll fast forward a number of years after having my own information product businesses in some niche spaces. I ended up beginning to share with mainstream entrepreneurs what I was doing with funnels. This is going back maybe about 10 years ago now. And the rest is really history. Today, I'm blessed to be the guy that most of the top marketing experts come to when they need help with their own campaigns. I've had the good fortune to work with the best of the best on the planet in terms of direct response. And so I would say that my superpower is being able to engineer customer acquisition campaigns that are able to scale out the wazoo on the front end in terms of generating new buyers. And so hope we'll, get the chance to really talk about my approach to engineering these campaigns and what makes it, wildly different from what most people do out there.
Yeah, no, of course, we talk about it. But first, just a question.
You just talked about salesmanship in print. That comes from Claude Hopkins, right? In his book Scientific Advertising. So from what you just said, you have studied all the classics, all these guys, but you're also doing marketing right now, today in 2024. So what do you think it's better to people that are just starting out, if they want to actually learn copy, learn direct response marketing? Should they just like buy some online course and go that way, just study what's working now? Or do you think it's better to actually have this background study of all the copywriting classics? Because some of these books are very old, right? For example, Scientific Advertising, I think it's 100 years old, maybe, right?
Yeah. So to answer the question, I would say a couple things, and I hope that we'll have the opportunity to come back and talk about the fact that probably today I don't believe that it is salesmanship in print anymore. I don't believe that salesmanship in print is the right mentality, the right approach to take. And we'll get into the difference between selling and marketing and how they're two completely different activities with two different outcomes and objectives and whatnot. But let me answer the core question that you posed, which is my answer is, number one, I do feel like it is valuable to still consume the many of the classics. I think that there are certain principles and elements taught in the classics that still hold true today. Things like what you would see as really copy 101 or marketing 101, focusing on the prospect, focusing on the benefits, the outcome, the transformation, the result that they want, understanding the difference between features and benefits in copy. So I do think that there is value in starting with the classics to get this foundation of persuasive language and understanding ultimately the kind of the core of what it is that we're doing. But then I feel that it is really necessary to look at and study, to become a student of the campaigns that are working today. Because what you will find is that there is a stark difference between the campaigns that are working today compared to the ones that were published and effective years ago, especially in competitive, crowded, and saturated markets where the sophistication of the audience is much greater than it was years ago. So you start with the foundation of the classics, and then I would go to studying what is working today, and more specifically, what is working today within different markets, meaning that, right, what is effective in one market may not necessarily be effective in another market because of the sophistication of the audience. The sophistication of the audience in a crowded, saturated, competitive space is wildly greater than, let's say, a newer market that's not as crowded and filled with direct response marketing. And so, does that answer the question?
Of course. Just one follow-up question. What books specifically do you recommend? Because when you talk about classics, there's just so much of them, so many of them. So do you have maybe one book or two that you think, oh, this is the one that you should read?
Yeah, so I would say that number one, the greatest marketing book ever published is Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. It's one that every serious direct response marketer should read every single year. Number two, right? It's a little bit deep. It's a lot kind of conceptual. There's a lot of big ideas in there, but it will give you a rock solid foundation in the most important and most valuable principles today. And Eugene Schwartz was one of the greatest copywriters ever to play the game. I also think John Capel's Tested Advertising Methods, I believe it is, specifically the 4th version, not the 5th version. So there's like version 4, not version 5. And so look for version 4 of Tested Advertising Methods. I also think the Robert Collier Letter book is another great one. It's much more kind of going through copy, old school copy. And I would say Joe Sugarman has a book, not Triggers. I forget what it's called. Advertising.
I think it's Adweek, the Adweek copywriting handbook.
Yeah, that's a version of it. Yes, that one is totally good. You read those books, devour them, study them. Don't just read them, and you have a tremendous foundation in the world of direct response.
Awesome. And for the listeners that are home, I think that the only way that you can get breakthrough advertising today is talking to a guy named Brian Kurtz. I
Yep.
think he republished the book or something like that.
Correct. He has the publishing rights today. He has a close relationship with Eugene Schwartz's. Eugene Schwartz has passed on, but his wife Brian is very close, and Brian has done a tremendous job of publishing and making it accessible. Prior to Brian taking over the publishing rights, there were listings for breakthrough advertising that were $700, $900 to pay for breakthrough advertising. And so today you can get it, I think, for, 60, $70, something like that. Well worth it. I actually, in my library back there's only one book besides my own that I have more than one copy of, and breakthrough advertising is it.
Awesome. And even if you pay $900, guys, it's still worth it. You should check it out. It's one of the best books in copywriting ever.
Opa, antes da gente seguir o podcast aqui, eu só queria te lembrar rapidinho que se tu tem um vídeo de vendas ou se tu tem um VSL e tu quer aumentar a conversão dele, quer conseguir ganhar mais dinheiro aí com o teu VSL sem gastar um centavo a mais em tráfego e sem mudar a tua copy, eu preparei um vídeo, tá? Que eu te mostro 7 testes extremamente fáceis que qualquer pessoa pode fazer e que provavelmente tu consegue fazer aí no teu VSL também para aumentar a conversão dele. Tá no primeiro link aqui nos comentários aqui do YouTube. É só tu clicar ali, assistir o vídeo e aumentar a conversão do teu VSL também, beleza? Então se tu ainda não viu esse vídeo, tá? Clica ali, assiste o vídeo, aplica os testes, tá? Porque só assim tu vai ganhar dinheiro. E agora, de volta aí pro podcast.
So Todd, you say that your superpower is creating these acquisition campaigns that you can have profit on the front end. So how do you do that? What's the first step if someone wants to create a direct marketing campaign?
Wow. Okay, so that's a big, broad, general question. Let me start with this because this will play into this and give some context to my answer. So one of the big differences between my journey in the direct response world compared to everybody else, which has radically impacted my approach to campaign creation, is that I had one foot in the online marketing world, one foot in the typical online marketing space. And at the same time, I also had one foot in the big direct response publishing space, working with companies like Agora, who is the 800-pound gorilla in the world of direct response. And I got to see very early on what it is that we were doing in the online marketing world and doing well that the big direct response publishing companies weren't doing. But I also got to see what the big direct response publishing companies were doing and doing really well that we over here in the online marketing world weren't doing. And what I was able to do was I was able to bring the best of both of those worlds together into kind of a seamless methodology or method, what is today referred to as the E5 method. And the big thing that I saw from the direct response marketing world, which has radically changed, it's been many years now, my approach, is really recognizing that that at the core of a direct response message, I'm going to give a lot here and then we could circle back and go deeper into anything.
Of course.
At the core of the most effective direct response marketing messages today is number one is the realization that marketing and selling are two different activities with two different objectives. So selling is what it is that you do when you are talking to a prospect or communicating with prospects that already know the type of product or service they want, and they now want to know why they should choose yours over the other options. Selling is much more about the features and benefits of the product and the offer, whereas marketing is all about the prospect and their problem, their unfulfilled desire, what they view as an ideal solution. And marketing is all about leading the prospect to ultimately want your product before you ever even introduce the product. And this is why Peter Drucker, one of the greatest management gurus ever, and this kind of one quote really kind of has been one of the big mantras in my whole marketing journey and my whole process for creating campaigns, which is what Peter Drucker said, was that the job of marketing is to make selling superfluous, to make selling unnecessary. And what Peter meant was that when marketing is done right, you ultimately lead the prospect to want your product, so that when you introduce the product and the offer, the prospect is already pre-sold on wanting it. And you don't need to go with the heavy, aggressive, in your face closing methods, right? Like that a hardcore salesperson would use.
Yeah.
And so that leads us to, well, then what is effective marketing and how do I create these campaigns? And so with that as the backdrop, so ultimately, what we look for in every campaign is we look for, within the solution that's being offered, within the product that's being offered, we look for and identify a unique mechanism. The unique mechanism is nothing more than how the product works uniquely to give the prospect the result or outcome that they want. It's different from, right? So let me take a step back and say this, that, and this is especially the case today, differentiation in marketing is essential. What prospects want to know up front very quickly is, what makes this different from every other option I have out there, from everything else out there that I can spend my money on? What is different about yours? And today, there are only two meaningful ways to differentiate. What I mean by meaningful ways is that it is of value to the prospect. There are only two ways to differentiate a product where your prospect cares about it. In other words, what I mean by that is, let's say you're a coach and you're providing coaching on something, and your point of differentiation is that you've got red hair and nobody else in your marketplace has red hair. That's not a point of meaningful differentiation, because nobody cares. There's no benefit, there's no value in it for the prospect. So there are only two ways to meaningfully differentiate. The first is what's called a USP, a unique selling proposition. That was first coined by direct response legend Rossa Reeves many years ago. A unique selling proposition is nothing more than, and there's a lot of definitions out there, but this is the easiest definition to understand. A unique selling proposition is when your product offers a unique benefit that the prospect cares about, compared to all of the other solutions. Meaning there is a benefit that comes with your product or service, your solution, that does not come with the other competing products, solutions, services out there. That is what's known as a unique selling proposition. Now the thing, right, and it's one of the two ways to meaningfully differentiate today. The problem is that USPs today, as we're recording this, are extremely rare. And they're usually only found with disruptive technologies. Like, for example, when Uber first hit the scene, right? And they were the first ride sharing app, right? Well, the ability to hail a ride from your phone, the ability to not have to have cash on you and be able to pay with your credit card, the ability to see when the driver would arrive, all of these different features which brought different benefits made those things a USP for Uber. But the moment that other rideshare companies came along, like Lyft, for example, all of those USPs disappeared. And so right today, finding and having a USP in a product is a rarity. Like I said, it's mostly found with disruptive products, disruptive technologies, which brings us then to the second way to meaningfully differentiate, and that is a unique mechanism. Now, even though they sound similar, unique selling proposition and unique mechanism, they are vastly different. A unique mechanism is the unique way that your product or service works to deliver the promised result, to deliver the promised outcome, the promised transformation that we are presenting. So we're not presenting an additional benefit. We may even be presenting the same promise, outcome, result as everybody else in the marketplace is, but we have a different mechanism, a different way that our product or service works to deliver that result. So unique selling proposition is a unique benefit. A unique mechanism is the unique way that the product or service works to deliver the benefit, to deliver the promise. So before I go on, does that make sense?
Of course.
Okay.
100%.
So, okay. Now, every product or service that works, that actually delivers some result, has a mechanism. What I mean by mechanism is, let's take a vitamin supplement, a supplement that brings down blood pressure. Well, there's a reason why that supplement is able to bring down blood pressure. There's a mechanism. It might be a certain ingredient. It might be the combination of ingredients. It might be the dosages. It might be the form of the ingredients. It might be all of the above. That's what we would label as the mechanism behind that supplement.
Yeah.
And so with that as the backdrop now, every campaign that we create is first and foremost driven by first identifying, fleshing out, and naming the unique mechanism behind the product. And unless go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Just a quick question, because I think this question will be valuable for the audience. So from what I understood, the benefit of the unique mechanism is to differentiate your offer, so people will actually see a difference and then they could buy for you. And the way that we do that is through this thing called the unique mechanism, but it only works if the audience actually believes that these unique mechanisms are actually will work for them.
Yep.
And is actually something unique. So if you have a product that is not that unique in the first place, you can still identify the mechanism, you can still name it, but at the end of the day, it will not sell because other people already, for example, have this mechanism. So what do you think about the idea of, instead of looking at the product to find the mechanism, you look at the market to see which mechanism was not introduced to the market yet, and then creating a product around this new mechanism, because then I think that it will be easier to sell this product. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so great question, man. Great, and lot of depth to what it is that you asked. So and I'll answer that in just a second. So first and foremost, right, when we say that we identify a unique mechanism, this is important because in order to do that, right, you need to be a student of your market. Like, let me take a step back. In the E5 method, the very first stage is what we call examination. You could think about it as research. You have to know your audience, prospects. You have to know and examine your competitors. And then after you've examined prospects, examined competitors, and there's a whole, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty details of how you do that and the whole process. But after you examine prospects, after you examine competitors, then you examine the product. And the reason why I'm sharing that here is because you need to know what is already being offered to your prospects through competitors in order to know whether you have a unique mechanism or not. If you aren't a student of your market and you don't do the examination stage, you might think you have a unique mechanism, but you don't. You really just have a commoditized mechanism. And so ultimately, we are identifying the unique mechanism. It has to be a unique mechanism.
Yeah.
If you have just a mechanism, you don't have any differentiation. What that means is you're selling the same mechanism that everybody else is selling or other people out in the marketplace are selling. And so the first step is the examination, so that now you can look at the product and identify what is unique about the way that this product works compared to the other solutions out there. And so, right, that's the key. The backdrop is, and this is important, it's unique in the eyes of the prospect. And so there might be aspects of your product or service and how your product or service works that is also in competitors' products and services. But if your competitors are, they're not talking about those aspects and you do, it becomes unique in the eyes of the prospect. So it doesn't have to be unique amongst competitors. It has to be unique in the eyes of the prospect, which is why you have to do the examination. You have to know what your prospects have already heard, have already seen, what they're being told, what they're being offered by other competitors. Now, look, you asked this question of, and you made this great point that, look, if they don't believe that this unique mechanism will work for them, they're not going to buy. And that's absolutely spot on the case. All across the board, what I will say is that when it comes to copy, when it comes to marketing campaigns in general, believability is essential. Because if they don't believe what it is that you're saying, if they don't believe what it is that you're claiming about the unique mechanism, if they don't believe that they're going to experience the result, the outcome, the transformation, they're not going to buy. And so everything that we do has to be believed by the prospect. And this is where, now we're circling back, and so hang with me for a second. This is where what I learned from the direct response, the big direct response publishers, and what they were doing differently from the internet marketing community comes into play in how I put together these campaigns. Once we've got the unique mechanism identified, ultimately, and I'm kind of skipping some steps here, but I want to make this point. Ultimately, what we then do is we put together a rock solid, airtight, logical, and emotional argument for not only what makes this unique mechanism different from all the other solutions, but what makes it superior. And this is an important little point that I just want to emphasize. What we're not doing, and this is why I say that it's not, I don't believe in salesmanship in print, because salesmanship, like the idea of salesmanship in print is basically presenting a promise, presenting a unique mechanism, and then presenting a whole bunch of benefits. This is what it'll do for you. You'll experience this, this, this. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this, and you'll enjoy this, 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 this. That's the typical copy approach of salesmanship in print. What we're doing is we're actually putting together an argument to prove what makes the unique mechanism not only different, but superior to every other method, process, system, mechanism, solution out there. And so our campaigns are, the thing that I like to say that you've probably heard me say before, that I've been training people on for, years and years now, is this is much more akin to thinking like a prosecutor presenting a case in court than it is a salesman presenting a sales pitch. Yeah. I am going to present a rock solid argument that leads the audience to one conclusion and one conclusion only, which is that this mechanism is the superior way to get the result and outcome that you want. And so it is much more logical than what you typically see from the salesmanship and print mentality of just benefit. We still have benefits in there. We still have emotion in there, but at the core is an argument that proves the difference and superiority of the unique mechanism compared to everything else. And here's the point that I want to make, that I look at all marketing campaigns, to me, are kind of really broken down into two core sections, two big chunks. The first chunk, which is 75% of the marketing campaign, 75% of the copy, 75% of what it is that I say is marketing. Specifically, in this case, is presenting the argument for the unique mechanism. Only the last 25% of a campaign is selling. That's the only part that I'm talking about the product. That's the only part that I'm talking about the offer, is in the last 25%. I don't talk about the product or talk about the offer until I've led the prospect to see that the unique mechanism is different and superior to every other option. And once I've led them to see that the unique mechanism is different and superior to every other solution out there, it's at that point that they want the unique mechanism. And that's when I segue into the offer, because when done right, the offer is the only place that they can experience the benefits of that unique mechanism. So you've created this all roads lead to you. They can't go Google and get it somewhere else, right? And when I go into the offer, after they've bought into the value of the unique mechanism, they're pre-sold. They want it. They want it before I've even mentioned the product or the offer. So this is why we see people that when we make the offer, right, they're thanking us. They're thanking us, whether it's on a webinar, whether they're sending into customer support. Thank you for putting this together for me. Why? Because we educated them through the first 75% on the unique mechanism. We presented that argument. They saw it, they got it, they want it, and then we gave them a way to get it.
Fala pessoal, antes de vocês seguirem aqui no podcast, eu só queria agradecer vocês aqui, tá? Porque a gente conseguiu fazer um progresso, a gente diminuiu o número de pessoas que não são inscritas aqui no canal do VTurb. Esse número hoje tá em 59,2%, vai aparecer o print aí na tela. E antes, tá? Era 65%. Então, cara, obrigado aí, tá? Isso aqui tá ajudando a gente a crescer mais aqui no nosso canal. A nossa meta aqui é chegar a 50% das pessoas que assistem nossos vídeos sendo inscritas aqui no canal. Então, se tu ainda não se inscreveu, cara, clica aqui embaixo, se inscreve aqui, tu não perde nada com isso, tá? Muito pelo contrário, só tem a ganhar com isso daí, porque quanto mais inscritos tem o canal, mais ele cresce, a gente consegue trazer convidados ainda maiores, que vai ter um conteúdo ainda melhor para que tu consiga assistir aí, então tu não perde nada com isso, só tem a ganhar. Então, cara, clica aqui embaixo, tá? Ajuda a gente a bater a meta aí de chegar a 50% das pessoas que assistem o canal como inscritos. Muito obrigado aí e bom podcast.
That's awesome. The first time that I saw this kind of argument was actually in your course, I think, or your book, the E5, where you have that framework. I think it's called 1, 2, 3 CPB. I think that's what I remember.
CPB chunks, yeah.
CPB chunks, exactly. And I also saw this in a book called Quick Start Copywriting System. It is by Tony Flores and Clayton Makepeace.
Yeah.
I think in the chapter 8, it's called the ABC process of making your copy invincible. So if you're in the audience, you want to know more how to create this bulletproof argument, you have these two resources that you can check it out. And that's actually, in my opinion, the hardest part, besides actually identifying the unique mechanism, but that's the hardest part in creating like your sales message, because at the end of the day, it's actually a creative process, right? You need to create the argument actually from scratch. Do you have any tips on that, on how people could get better in creating these kind of logical arguments?
Yeah, well, I think, just to give some food for thought, I think that people, when they hear this idea or this concept of an argument, a logical argument, a logic chain, they get intimidated, not realizing that we put together arguments all the time for different ideas, different beliefs that we have. If you think that, lifting weights is essential for older people to remain healthy, and I asked you why, what's ultimately going to come next, if you have any knowledge, like if you have anything to back up that statement that you just said, is going to be some form of an argument. Right, you're going to present some form of an argument. If you said to somebody like, look, if your friend, said to you, I'm gonna go work today from the library, and you said, well, you can't go work from the library today, and they said, why? And you said, well, because the library is closed on Sundays, and today is Sunday, and so today the library is closed, so you can't work there. That's an argument.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of an argument. And so, so ultimately it is something that people just don't even realize. They're presenting arguments. They're giving reasons why somebody should believe X. And so that's really all we're doing. Now, part of the process that I skipped over is that once we've got the unique mechanism and we've identified what is what we call the primary promise, what's the outcome, the result, the transformation that we're presenting to prospects that they can experience thanks to this mechanism. What is that overarching result, outcome, transformation that we know they want, that we can present to them they're going to experience with this unique mechanism? Once you've got the unique mechanism and you've identified the right primary promise, we then put together what we call the campaign thesis. The campaign thesis is the one belief that we need prospects to have before we segue into the offer. And that one belief is always in some form, it's always that the best or the fastest or the easiest way or the most reliable way to experience the primary promise is with the unique mechanism. That's the form. We actually, right? And so once you've got that campaign thesis, you then have to ask yourself, well, what do they need to believe that? Just like if you said, right, older people should weight train for health benefits, well, what do they need to believe that? They might need to believe that when they get older, they lose muscle. And losing muscle, puts them at risk for, breaking a bone if they fall or something like that. You might have to explain to them that, weight training gives them, spinal health, or there might be things that they have to believe, 3 things, 4 things, 5 things that they need to believe in order to believe that every older person to remain healthy should be weight training. Well, once we've identified what do they need to believe in order to believe that, to believe the thesis, each one of those beliefs then become a CPB chunk.
Got it.
Each one of those become just a chunk. And then we go, right? And for reference for everybody, CPB stands for claim. We make a claim, right? Like we offer proof, and then we offer benefits. What that means to you is, right? And that's how every argument is. There's a thesis statement, a campaign thesis statement, that becomes our North Star. That becomes our guiding light. Everything we do and say and show and present in that first 75% of the campaign, the marketing portion, is designed to lead prospects to that one belief, to that campaign thesis, to accept and believe that campaign thesis. See, because I know if they believe that the better way, the superior way, the faster way for them to experience the primary promise is with the unique mechanism, if I get them to believe that, they're going to want the offer, because the offer is the only place that they could get the unique mechanism. So then what we do, right, is, well, what do they need to believe that? Okay, it's these 5 things. Then each of those 5 things become their own chunk. Number 1, CPB, claim. We claim that thing to be true, right? That, people, as they get older, they lose muscle. So weight training is the only activity that helps to, build muscle, right? Here's proof of that, right? And so what that means for you is that when you're building muscle, you're blah, 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 blah. Next CPB chunk for thing number 2 that they need to believe in order to believe the thesis. And all we're doing is just leading them down this path so that by the time we're done, they're like, I get it. I see that the best way for me to primary promise is with this unique mechanism. I get it. How do I use it now? How do I implement it? Boom. We segue into the offer.
Todd, you have no idea how much money I made using your exact process. Exact this thing that you just said, man. It's amazing. It really works, guys. And there's a book called The 16-Word Sales Letter. I think it's by
Evaldo.
It's by a Brazilian, Evaldo Albuquerque, exactly. And guys, if you're listening to this and you want to know more about how to create these kind of arguments, that's another resource that you can look into too. But since our goal is to create this argument and getting back to unique mechanism, if we find, for example, 2 mechanisms that are actually unique, do you think that a way to choose, to prioritize which mechanism we are going to develop is just to see which one I can create the better argument, or do you have other criteria?
No, you nailed it, which is super savvy of you, man. Because very few people, like, kudos, man, for even saying that, because very few people recognize that. I always say to people, right? I always tell clients or students, whatever, that, like, look, the mechanism that you have the strongest argument for is the one to go with. The one where, right, the one that you feel most confident that you can present an argument for, a rock solid argument for, is the one to go with, right? Like, don't, and I always say, like, don't, in marketing in general, and this is another kind of side point, right? Like, look, what folks need to understand is that anybody can claim anything in marketing today. And you have to understand, right, that the internet is the least trusted of all communication mediums today, because people know that anybody can put up a web page. It's super simple today, and anybody can say anything. There's not the same oversight on the internet and web pages as there are, let's say, in newspaper, print or direct mail per se, where there's a lot more legalities involved. And so you have to realize that just because you claim that something works quickly, just because you claim something is easy, just because you claim something is better than everything else, merely presenting these claims doesn't make it persuasive, because today people are much more skeptical and jaded compared to years ago, because they've seen ridiculous advertising and marketing messages, because they've bought products that didn't fulfill on what it is that they promised. And so today you need proof, you need evidence, you need support for what it is that you are claiming. And this is why I always tell students and clients that don't claim something that you can't prove, because all you do is just leave a gap of doubt in the mind of the prospect. And so don't make any claim that you can't prove. And this is why also, right, your biggest claim should only be as big as your biggest proof point, which is really just saying the same thing, that you need to back up what it is that you are saying. You need to offer proof, evidence, support. Now, let me just say this to ease everybody's any concerns, right? In the easiest way to offer that proof, support, evidence is to use reasoning and logic. What I mean by that is that if we said, right, this is super simple, and we followed it up with because blah, 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 because it only requires 3 clicks of the mouse, or the reason why is it only requires 3 clicks of the mouse, or the reason why is because it only requires. What happens is everything that comes after the word because, everything that comes after the phrase, the reason why, or the reason why is because, serves in the mind of the prospect as proof, evidence, support for what we just said. This works quickly, or this is the easiest solution out there. The reason why is because what we say after is the support for that. What we see today from a lot of people that are, whether they're novice copywriters or they're just relying on salesmanship in print, is they don't follow it up with the reason why is because. They just make claim after claim after claim after claim. And so today you need to offer that support. And today I believe wholeheartedly that, what used to be said was that people buy out of emotion, and then later on after they buy, they rationalize their buying decision with logic. I don't believe that that's the case anymore. Today, our marketing campaigns need to present the logical reasons and the emotional reasons why somebody should be excited about this solution. And that comes in the form of an argument. If you look at the claim proof of the CPB chunk, claim proof, that's the logical portion. The benefit is where we stimulate the emotion. Claim proof, logic, benefit, emotion. Claim proof, logic, benefit, emotion. And so does that make sense?
Of course, yes. And just one more question about mechanism, Todd. And I think that would be the last question, actually, because we are running out of time. But for example, every day new people go into a market, and then old people leave this market. For example, every day a woman looks in the mirror and think, oh, I'm overweight, or I'm getting some sagging skin or something. So because of that, a unique mechanism that is actually not unique, for example, collagen, is actually unique for this kind of prospect, the prospect that is just entering the market. Because of that, I think there's maybe a room to use unique mechanisms that are already being used in the marketplace, because then you can get like this new people coming into the marketplace and sell it to them. That would be like an easier way to find a unique mechanism. So people that are just starting out and they don't know how to create one or how to do one, it's like maybe a little shortcut. What do you think about that? Do you think that's like a good idea, a bad idea, or what's your opinion?
Well, yeah, I think that you have to know the breakdown of the marketplace to know what percentage of the total addressable market you're really going to be marketing to. What I mean by that is you really have to know what the turnover is in the market. How many new people are coming in and how many old people are leaving, or people that have been in the marketplace for a long time, how many of them are leaving. Some markets have a lot of turnover where like people go into the market and leave the market. Other markets don't have a lot of turnover. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say that look at if we were marketing some sort of business training, just as an example, for personal trainers, and we were marketing that a business training for dentists. Well, the personal trainers, because there's a low barrier of entry to become a personal trainer, right? You could spend a few $100, get certified, become a personal trainer. There is a lot more turnover in that market than is in the dental market. So in the dental market, right, while new people come in and older people kind of retire, the market is made up of a large percentage of people that have been in the market for a significant period of time. And so if you use a mechanism that is already out there, that is not a unique mechanism, for dentists, you may be only talking to a small percentage of the total addressable market, or appealing to a small percentage of the total addressable market. Whereas over in the personal training space, that is a much bigger chunk of personal trainers, because most personal trainers don't stay in the industry long term. And so you have to understand the makeup of the market to know what, like who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And what I would say is just the last little point, and this may be kind of a little advanced or skipping ahead a little bit, but the most amount of scalability comes from being able to communicate effectively with the largest percentage of the total addressable market. And so, right, like if you're only talking to, call it 10% of the market, depending on how big the market is, right, you don't have the same level of scalability as you do if you're talking to the 90% of the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so, right, which impacts a lot of things. If you're talking to the 10%, right, usually, and you're using paid advertising, right, your cost of media is going to be higher. So you're paying more for a visitor. Like it changes the whole economics of the campaign. So those are things to really kind of pay attention to.
Got it. Todd, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, man. You're so smart. And since you were one of my teachers, I really like doing that. And actually, you were and you still are. So for the people that are not learning from you right now and they would like to do so, what do you recommend that they start out? Do you have like some book that you recommend, or they should start with E5, or what do you recommend?
I mean, look, I think that certainly, I think, they should get the E5 book and go through E5. If they really want to dive even deeper, they should go through the E5 masterclass. I know that sounds self-serving, but it is the most complete. Like you will not need another training on direct response campaign creation if you go through the E5 masterclass. And so
I agree.
So that's, I mean, I would tell them start with the E5 book. They could go to toddbrown.me, and I think there should be a link somewhere on there, or a picture of the book that they could click on and go grab the book for $10 or something like that. Start there. And then if you want to go deeper, the E5 masterclass, you'll get a foundation. You'll get the nitty gritty of everything that we talked about and a whole lot more.
Awesome, Todd. And if people want to follow you on social media, do you have like any network that you are more active on?
No, I'm not the most active on social media. I mean, they certainly could, check me out on Instagram, Todd Brown. They could do a search on Facebook for E5 Nation, the letter E, the number 5 Nation. That's a free, Facebook group that we've got. But I'm not super active on social media, man.
No, you are, man. At least you're on the Vitor podcast. So
there you go. There you go. I love it, man. There you go.
Okay, guys, all the links are going to appear on the screen. So if you want to know more about Todd, which I recommend, just do it, man. It's one of the best marketing teachers in the planet for sure. And this is this was another podcast here from Vitor, and I hope you like it. That's it, guys.
Cara, muito obrigado aí por ter assistido aqui mais um episódio do Segredos da Escala. Se tu gostou do episódio, não se esquece, tá? De curtir aqui esse episódio, de se inscrever no canal do VTurb pra tu receber aí mais episódios aí na tua caixa de entrada. Isso é muito importante pra gente e se tu fizer isso, eu te garanto, tá? Que eu vou trazer os melhores convidados aqui pra passar conteúdo pra ti, beleza? E se tu tá procurando aí mais episódios aí pra assistir, cara, eu vou deixar 2 episódios aqui, tá? Em algum lugar aqui da tela aqui, dos Segredos da Escala pra tu ver. Então clica ali, vê eles, tá? Assiste também, vale a pena. Grande abraço e até mais.